Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and in this video, we're actually going to be reviewing a Civil War history book, which I think is not, I don't think it's the first, I think it's the second on this channel. I think I can count on my hand the number of Civil War books that I've read in the past, like 10 years. But today, we got The Demon of Unrest, a saga of hubris, heartbreak, and heroism at the dawn of the Civil War by Erik Larson. First of all, just this cover really is a banger right there. And I want to thank Crown Publishing for sending me this to review. Obviously, we're going to keep it unbiased and everything, but fortunately, it was a really good book, so it's going to be a pretty easy review, if I do say so myself. Just the fact that it's this long and keeping me interested on the Civil War is already kind of like big bonus points. But as you can probably tell from the title, this is all about sort of the opening salvo against Fort Sumter when the Confederacy bombards a federal fort in Charleston Harbor in South Carolina. However, there's a lot of lead up towards that, and honestly, if it wasn't such a serious, dramatic thing, you know, leading towards the Civil War, where like, what, 750,000, you know, soldiers lose their lives and stuff, it's almost a comedy of errors, just how, like, comical both sides were making so many mistakes, and like the lead up to this, it's like I said, it's like so heartbreakingly funny in a way. But anyways, the book deals with sort of kind of Lincoln's maneuvering, trying to, you know, salvage something out of the Fort Sumter garrison. You know, do we keep it? Do we look like a bunch of weaklings by just evacuating? Do we just like hold around forever and then we're gonna lose it? And then the South, the Confederacy, kind of wanting, you know, their cake and eating it too, and all that stuff, where they're basically like, oh, we're gonna secede, but also we're gonna keep all the federal stuff as well. We want to be our own country, but also like not follow the rules of being like their own country, and all the consequences that sort of like come along with it. So there's a couple of major players that Erik Larson deals in a lot of the primary sources to kind of convey the story. Obviously, you got the Buchanan administration, which I almost, in a way, I almost feel like I gotta like read up on that, on President Buchanan and his like cabinet and stuff, because just the vibe you're getting is he just wanted nothing. He was so tired of like all this kind of like secessionist talk and everything. He just wanted out of there, just wanted to retire, everything like that. And you can't almost like, granted, he probably didn't help matters a whole lot by being kind of ineffective and stuff. But yeah, you just kind of feel for him. Like that would just be such an annoying thing to sort of deal with. But anyways, like I was saying, you got kind of Lincoln's administration coming in, and actually that was kind of a nice little like kind of side story, kind of dealing with that whole election thing, where it's kind of sad how the only other time where we've had, you know, insurrection and voting, like, you know, the electoral college stuff, you know, violence and everything, the only other time that that was even hinted at was like, you know, right here in 1861, before Lincoln is like officially you know, voted in by the electoral college and everything, in the Senate and everything. You know, just comparing that to January 6th a couple years ago, it's just, I don't know, just makes you think like, what is going on? Granted, there wasn't any quite back then, but there was definitely there was people that tried to kind of disturb it a little bit. Anyways, like I said, there's other characters. I love how I'm like going off on tangents on everything just because there's so much to cover. You got a lot of different primary sources. You have Robert Anderson, who is the garrison commander over in Fort Sumter. Got a lot of his letters and diary entries and journal stuff. You got Mary Chestnut, who is the wife and a major socialite, or wife of a planter, of a famous planter in Charleston in South Carolina. She's kind of like a socialite and has connections with, like, you know, all the big names in the area. You also got like correspondence with what's his name, William Russell, who I think is technically the first war correspondent when he did journalism over the Crimean War and everything. And there's also a few others like Edmund Ruffin, who's got to be one of the most unlikable historical figures that like I've ever read. He's like the most vain, I don't know, just pretentious fire eater from the South, who just like his whole like life, like towards the end of his life, is just dedicated to like causing like you know, stirring the pot and getting states to like secede and everything. But then when he like goes on and like anytime he's like you know, honored or mentioned by like other people like kind of in the circle and stuff, he just like preens himself like a peacock, and it's just so annoying. Anyways, you got like all his like journal entries and everything like that. One thing I will say that was like one of the only like kind of one of the negative things that I had throughout the book is there's almost so many primary sources. When he tries to put like everyone's opinion or kind of, you know, their point of view on like a certain incident, like kind of leading up to something, you know, you might have like one page of like, you know, Lincoln and his cabinet, like William Seward and stuff, who was his Secretary of State, but I have no idea why Lincoln picked him. He was such like a treacherous, like kind of like two-faced guy. Anyways, you kind of go from like, you know, Lincoln's like perspective to Mary Chestnut's kind of, you know, socializing with people's perspective, and like Anderson's perspective, you know, from him like sitting in the floor, everything like that. And each one's like almost like a page, and it's kind of like the same stuff, but like different points of view and everything. Sometimes I felt like we didn't need quite that many perspectives on the same thing. But anyway, it is kind of like fun learning about, I guess, in different ways. But like I said, I think it could have been toned down probably just a little bit. I will say learning from this book, though, is just, you can't come away from this book. And even though I live, for those who have been subbed to me for a while, you all know I live in like the farthest north possible, basically, in the United States, you know, in northern Maine. I did live in the South for about a decade, and you always heard like things like, oh, it's just halftime or states' rights and blah blah blah. This book will show you it had nothing to do with states' rights. No, the states did not give an F about states' rights per se. Like, you know, when South Carolina secedes and everything, like half the documentation on it is basically, you know, we just like want to like have slaves, and you can't like tell us like what to do about it and stuff like that. Like, it's crazy. Like I said, if you read this book and come away going, oh, it was still about states' rights and not really a lot to do with slavery, like the Civil War and stuff, like, we're gonna beat you on the head with this book, basically. Which, you know, it's a pretty hefty tome. I think it might do a little bit of damage there, but overall, like I said, I learned a ton. But yeah, oh yeah, going back to like the comedy of errors, I love how this review is like the most unscripted, just, you know, free for all like I've ever done here. But yeah, the comedy of errors here, just for example, on both sides, you know, when Lincoln, his administration finally, after like a month, when Anderson basically said, yeah, we're gonna have to like surrender, we're literally gonna run out of food in like 3 weeks or whatever. They're like, we'll do like a resupply mission or whatever. But there was a couple different forts that they wanted to do. It wasn't just Fort Sumter. They requisitioned like the biggest like ship that they had for 2 separate missions. So, and then both commanders somehow were not like aware of this. And then the one that goes to Fort Sumter realizes, wait a second, I don't have like the good good one. Like, it makes like absolutely no sense. You can't make that up. Then also, all the other forts in Charleston Harbor, after Major Anderson evacuates everyone to Sumter, you know, the Confederacy is doing their drills and stuff. Most of the time you're doing blanks and everything, and, you know, both sides kind of like obviously knew that. And then, you know, these trainees in Charleston didn't realize like some of the cannons were loaded and actually fired like shots at Fort Sumter without like meaning to. And it's just like, it's kind of ironic. Like I said, it's just a comedy of errors, but the thing is, they're like, both sides are trying to be like as chivalrous as possible, like trying to avert things and everything. So they're like writing like letters back and forth, and it's just, like I said, you almost like can't make it up in a way. But like I said, it's a very, at first I was kind of skeptical. I was thinking, how are we gonna have a 500-page book on this? But like I said, a lot of it is kind of dealing with the background and kind of the times of the era leading up to like how stressful like everything was starting to get with, you know, Lincoln's election, then the states seceding, some states kind of like following suit, stuff like that. Like I said, just found it really interesting. It's very readable and actually goes by pretty quickly because a lot of the chapters are broken into smaller sections. Let's see if I can show stuff like this. Let's see. Well, of course, like, you know, you got different parts right here, and then like little subheadings when it has like different points of views and stuff. Anyways, that might not have been the best like selection right there, but it goes by quite quickly. And I guess just to sort of wrap things up, one of probably the biggest takeaway for me after reading this book was just really realizing how much cognitive dissonance like the rich aristocracy of the South really like had going on in their heads. like a lot of them kind of acknowledged, you know, slavery was kind of wrong, but you know, it's just like kind of the way we do things. There were a few that were basically like, yeah, it doesn't really matter because the Bible says it's like okay or something. But the thing is, you know, you had French travelers like going through the South. You got like, you know, the English like correspondence and everything. You know, anyone from the North, everyone basically is going, what are you guys doing? You guys are like 100 years behind. You're not acting like a civilized society. Like you guys are just backwards as F. Like what is going on? And they're like all totally cool with it. And you know, it's just us against the world and everything. And I don't know, like just kind of like the mental loops that they had to do to kind of say, oh, you know, we're super chivalrous and honorable and this whatever in our society, but then also be like slaveholding and then like dissolve the union because that's just better to do than to basically just be like the rest of the world and like kind of move on from the past. I guess that was kind of my takeaway. One thing I do wish the book maybe talked about a little bit more, which there's almost none of that in there, is almost like the regular poor Southerners like point of view. I guess I need to find like a book maybe on that, like, you know, just some like random broke farmer that has no slaves and stuff, kind of what he was thinking about all of this kind of stuff while it was going on. But anyways, like I said, I highly recommend this book. Like I said, if I finish a 500-page Civil War book in I think like 3 days, that's pretty good for me. Like Civil War stuff is just not really my thing per se. But like I said, I'm trying to branch out this year and read a lot more on. It seems to be a lot of like 1800s and like Russian history for some reason this year, even though normally medieval times is kind of my cutoff. But let me know what you think, and if this sounds like a book that would be interesting to you. I know a lot of people love military histories, and a lot of people love the American Civil War and stuff as kind of like a reading topic. So let me know if this one sounds good to you. I highly recommend it. Really readable, and I learned a ton. So thanks so much for Crown for sending that out to me. And always remember, whatever you end up reading, read victoriously.